Yes.
What inspires you to be a writer?
Incompetence and everything else. It's all I ever really wanted to do. It looked like easy work to me before I could read. When stories just appeared in these black marks on pages and my mother read them to me. I don't think there was ever a time when I didn't basically like stories better than anything. I just do. I still do. I like narrative. Even in poetry, I think I prefer narrative. I like stories that unfold in time, where you find out what happens. And I always did. So I think that's what it is, more than anything.
What advice could you give for young writers?
How young?
I'm 20.
Oh, you. I actually think the most, now I don't know if every writer needs this. I know of some writers who are a lot more prolific than I am, who just write literally dozens, even hundreds of stories, and they hope to hit 12 out of 150, and they're satisfied with that. I couldn't possibly do that because I don't write very much. So I had to learn to read my own work. That is to say, I had to learn to revise, but not just to revise kind of automatically, to put the work down, to go away from it, to do other things, and then to come back and read it as you would read someone else's work. And that's been the most useful thing for me, although I know other writers use other methods.
So you kind of like self-edit?
I actually do a lot of the writing the second time through and the third time through. My drafts look like hen scratching. I write small anyway, but I love the privacy of a handwritten page, and I am constantly adding things. And I'm taking things out too, but.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Situations you encountered when you worked with one?
Let me think. Well, two of them are. I'd say that Maggie and Tommy Hansel are definitely based loosely on actual people. The other characters are composite characters or imagined from scanty information I had about people that really interested me, for instance, the loan shark. I had a similar person in my family who I wasn't allowed to know very well, needless to say, and I was really fascinated by this. And actually, when I was working on the racetrack, he was working on the racetrack too, but I didn't actually know him. I was working on what they call a bull ring. That is a very small, dinky, rundown track, and he was his sphere of operations was Pimlico, but for many, many reasons, I wanted to understand that character better, and there was no way to do it other than to imagine him. So.
Your revision process, how you kept at it?
Like a lot of writers that I know, and Western Michigan University, Western's creative writing program has tended to nurture stylists, that is, people who really cared a lot about their prose style, because the people who taught in the program, who chose the people who came into the program, really cared a lot about prose style. That kind of writer, not always, but often, is doing many drafts in the course of even finishing the first draft, because every sentence gets worked over so many times. So when I say that I had a complete first draft, I think it was an advanced draft. And that was 10 years ago. I think there were definitely things wrong with it. And I began to know what I had a vague notion of what they were. But I also kind of lost confidence in this manuscript for a number of reasons, more than half of which are just plain neurotic. But some of them were not neurotic. For one thing, I was really worried about the dialect passages. I was worried that I was going to be taken horribly to task for that it was going to be considered presumptuous, and thank God that hasn't happened yet. Might happen yet, but it hasn't happened yet. That worried me very much. Some of you who know my previous books know perfectly well that I specialized in reckless young women. And I didn't want this novel to be about a reckless young woman. I wanted to write a social novel. I wanted to write a novel in which I had a small community all there from the opening of the novel, or close to the opening of the novel, and their points of view, their several points of view, were sustained and weaving in and out of each other throughout the book. When I finished the book and I saw that reckless young woman in there again, I was really, that was neurotic. Now, because I saw her as huge, and she's not that huge in the book, really. I saw her as huge, and it wasn't just that I was disappointed by that. It was that I developed an aversion to reading the book. Remember, I just said to this young man who asked me, what do I advise young writers to do? And older writers. I say, especially if you are working on a novel, you have to stop at certain points and see what you have. You have to stop completely and give yourself as much sense of distance as you can possibly arrange, even if you have to lay the book aside for a little while, and then read it. Yeah, I mean, you really have to read it. I could not bring myself to read that book. That was the biggest problem right there. And my husband, Peter Blakela, and Bruce McPherson, the editor of McPherson and Company, to whom I had promised the book at a certain time if I hadn't realized my more ambitious plans for it. And how was I going to realize them if I never even read the thing? They were very worried. And they really thought I was never going to write anything again because this book was in my way and I wasn't doing it. I know now, they talked on the phone, they strategized. But I think it was Bruce's idea, or else his sheer presumptuousness. When I hadn't delivered him a revised manuscript by the middle of this summer, he just took the old manuscript, put it into unbound galleys, and sent it to me and said, well, here's your book. Have any corrections you want to make? I was horrified. And then I read it. Then I said, oh, well, I better read this book. This is going to be it's going to be very embarrassing. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, by far not. And I could see, I felt that I could see how to fix it. There's some more complications to this that I'll just tell you very hastily. At a certain point, I pulled a story out of it, and for that story, I had rearranged some of the innards of the novel, and I liked the way it came out. But then I left it. But when you do that, when you do surgery on a manuscript, then it's not a finished manuscript anymore, which is what I always tell my students: do not do surgery on a story that you want to be sending out unless you absolutely know you have time and will to fix it, because otherwise it will stay probably in your bottom drawer for the rest of your life. Well, I did that, you know, and that's how things were going. But as it turned out, I was able to put the rest of the novel into congruence with that other approach, which was to sustain each the visits with each character's inner voice a little bit longer in the beginning of the book, so that it wouldn't feel so choppy. Ironically, having longer sections of each made the beginning faster than it had been before. So I think that really, it wasn't in sheer numbers of words, it wasn't a huge change, but I think it really changed the effect of the book dramatically.